It was a cold, rainy afternoon when something happened that would change the lives of two people forever. The bustling city streets were packed with hurried pedestrians, each trying to escape the bitter chill of the weather. But among all the busy crowds, there was one figure that seemed out of place. A young boy, barely in his teens, sitting alone on the sidewalk. His clothes were tattered, his face pale, and his eyes, though filled with pain, were vacant as if he had given up on hope. He was disabled, his legs seemingly trapped in a state of paralysis, unable to move or stand. The world rushed by him, no one stopping, no one caring. Then out of nowhere, a car pulled up. The door opened, and out stepped a man, wealthy, successful, and dressed in a suit that seemed to be the exact opposite of the boy's ragged state. He had always been the kind of person who had everything, the kind of person who never thought twice about what others lacked. But as he looked down at the boy, something inside of him shifted. The usual indifference he felt for the suffering of others was replaced by a sense of urgency, an overwhelming pull to help. This wasn't just a person in need. It was a human being, a child who had no voice, no one to turn to. The millionaire bent down, extending a hand to the boy, who looked up in confusion, as if unable to comprehend that someone actually saw him. The cold was making the boy tremble, but it wasn't just the chill in the air. It was the loneliness that had frozen him from within. The man, still unsure of what to say, simply asked, "Are you all right?" The boy shook his head weakly, and in that moment, everything changed. Without hesitation, the millionaire did something that would change the course of both their lives. He picked the boy up, carefully cradling him in his arms, and brought him into his car. No questions, no hesitations, just an instinctive drive to save a life. This simple act of kindness was the beginning of a journey neither could have ever imagined. As the man drove the boy to his home, his mind raced with questions. Why had the boy been left alone? Who had abandoned him? And what had driven him to such a dark place, physically and emotionally? These were questions he didn't have answers to, and for the first time in a long time, he found himself genuinely concerned for someone else. It wasn't just about doing the right thing anymore. It was about finding out the truth. Back at the man's luxurious home, he made the boy comfortable in a guest bedroom, offering him warmth, food, and the promise of safety. But as the boy sat there in silence, the millionaire couldn't help but wonder. Would this gesture of kindness be enough to heal the scars that ran deeper than what the boy's eyes revealed? The boy had been through something that left him broken, physically and emotionally. But what was it? Could anyone, even someone as wealthy as him, ever fix what had been broken? Days turned into weeks, and the millionaire did everything he could to give the boy a new life. He introduced him to new therapies, sought out the best doctors, and did everything possible to improve his physical condition. Yet no matter how much the boy's body healed, something remained hidden inside. The walls he had built around himself were still there, impenetrable and solid. The boy was grateful for the safety and warmth, but there was always an air of distance, as if he were still far away from the world, far away from any hope of normalcy. The millionaire, too, found himself wrestling with his own emotions. What had drawn him to the boy in the first place? Was it compassion, or had he simply been driven by the idea of saving someone in need? And now that he had brought him into his world, into a life of comfort and luxury, was that enough? The more he tried to help, the more complicated things became. One evening, as the two of them sat in the living room, the boy finally spoke. His voice was soft, almost a whisper, as if unsure whether he should even speak at all. "Why did you help me?" he asked. "Why didn't you just keep going like everyone else?" The millionaire was taken aback. He had expected many questions, but never this one. He had no immediate answer, no neat explanation that would make sense of his decision. But what he did know was that, in that moment, something had shifted. The boy was no longer the broken child he had found on the street. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, a spark of life that hadn't been there before. But the truth was far from clear. The millionaire soon began to realize that rescuing the boy wasn't as simple as taking him home and offering him comfort. There was more to this story than met the eye, and the deeper he dug into the boy's past, the more troubling the answers became. What had led to this child's abandonment? Who had left him to die alone on the streets? The questions only grew, and with them, the mystery surrounding the boy's life intensified. Just when it seemed like they were beginning to understand one another, the boy began to change. His behavior shifted. He became withdrawn once more, and even though he had physical comforts, the emotional scars began to resurface. Something dark from his past was threatening to unravel the delicate bond they had started to form. The millionaire found himself torn between his desire to help and the unsettling feeling that he was on the verge of uncovering something dangerous. What if his kindness had opened a door to a world that neither of them was ready to face? And so, as the boy turned away from the life he had been given, the millionaire found himself facing a decision that would alter both their futures. Was he ready to dive deeper into the boy's painful past, or would he turn his back on the mystery before it swallowed them whole? With every passing day, the tension mounted, and the answers became more elusive. What had really happened to this child? And why had he been abandoned in the first place? The million-dollar question loomed larger than ever, and as their story was about to take a dramatic turn, one thing was certain: they would never be the same again. The next chapter in their journey was about to unfold, and it would change everything. Days turned into weeks, and the millionaire found himself increasingly obsessed with the mystery of the boy's past. Every time he thought he had gotten closer to understanding what had happened, more questions seemed to arise. The boy, whose name was Lucas, remained mostly silent, retreating into his own world. He would sit by the window for hours, staring out at the world he no longer seemed a part of, lost in his thoughts. Despite all the comforts the millionaire had offered, the boy seemed trapped in a place neither of them could reach. One evening, as the millionaire sat in his study, surrounded by papers and books, he began to search through the local news archives, hoping for some clue about Lucas's past. There was a small mention in a report about a boy found abandoned on the streets several weeks ago, but it was vague, with no further details. That was all he had to go on. He had tried asking Lucas directly, but each time the boy's eyes would glaze over, and he would change the subject. It was as though he was holding something back, something he wasn't ready to share. The millionaire knew it was time to dig deeper, but he was torn. He had made a promise to Lucas, to provide him with a safe place, away from the pain of his past. But with every unanswered question, every secret that lingered in the air, he couldn't shake the feeling that the boy's story was too dark to ignore. The more he learned, the more he realized that Lucas's abandonment might not have been as simple as it seemed. There was something sinister at play here, something that went beyond a child being lost or neglected. Meanwhile, Lucas's behavior grew more erratic. He would have sudden outbursts, and then retreat into silence for days. Sometimes he would refuse to leave his room, and other times he would cry in the middle of the night, his sobs barely audible from the hallway. The millionaire tried to comfort him, but the boy's emotional wall was impenetrable. The deep scars left by his past were not something that could be healed with money, attention, or even love. It was as if Lucas had been through something so traumatic that no amount of care could fix it. Then one night, the situation took a dramatic turn. The millionaire had just returned from a meeting and was heading upstairs when he heard strange noises coming from Lucas's room. His heart raced as he rushed toward the door, knocking softly before entering. Inside, Lucas was sitting on the floor, shaking uncontrollably, his eyes wide with fear. His hands were trembling as he clutched a small, crumpled piece of paper. "Lucas, what's wrong?" the millionaire asked, his voice filled with concern. Lucas looked up, his face pale, his eyes filled with terror. I remember," he whispered. "I remember what happened." The millionaire's heart skipped a beat. After weeks of uncertainty, it seemed that Lucas was finally ready to talk. He sat down beside the boy, trying to calm him, but Lucas's words came out in broken fragments. Just people who worked for them. They said I was special, that I had abilities, but I wasn't supposed to remember. The millionaire's mind reeled. Abilities? What was Lucas talking about? This wasn't just a boy who had been abandoned on the streets. This was a boy with a past far darker and more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Whoever they were still out there searching for him. The millionaire had unknowingly brought this boy into his home, but now it seemed like he had opened the door to something far more complicated and potentially dangerous than he could have ever anticipated. The following days were filled with tension. The millionaire tried to keep the boy safe, but the fear in Lucas's eyes was growing stronger with each passing moment. The boy kept speaking in fragments, telling bits and pieces of his past, but never enough to form a complete picture. It was clear now that Lucas had been part of some kind of experiment, something that had gone horribly wrong. And the people behind it weren't just going to let him go. They would stop at nothing to get him back. But as the millionaire made plans to protect Lucas, something unexpected happened. One evening, just as he was about to call a private investigator for help, the lights of the house flickered. The front doorbell rang. He froze. It was late, and no one was supposed to be visiting. He hesitated before answering the door. What he found on the other side of the door would change everything. Standing in the rain was a man, tall, with a cold, calculating look in his eyes. He was holding a briefcase. Without saying a word, he handed over the briefcase to the millionaire. "This is for your own good," the man said in a voice so calm, it sent chills down the millionaire's spine. "You have something of ours, and we're here to take it back." The briefcase clicked open, revealing a set of documents, all stamped with official-looking logos. The millionaire's heart sank as he realized the gravity of what was unfolding. The boy wasn't just in danger. The danger was much bigger than either of them had ever imagined. And they were now both caught in a web of secrets far beyond their control. The conflict was reaching its peak, and everything was about to change. Would they escape the people who were hunting them? Or would the shadows of Lucas's past catch up with them both? Only time would tell. The millionaire stood frozen in his doorway, staring at the man with the briefcase. His heart raced as the cold rain dripped down his face, mingling with the sweat of anxiety. This wasn't a simple situation anymore. It was something much bigger. The man's cold eyes were fixed on him, and the briefcase in his hand felt like a symbol of everything Lucas had been running from. "You're making a mistake," the millionaire said, his voice shaky but firm. "I don't know who you are, but I'm not handing him over to you. He's a child. He's been through enough." The man didn't flinch. "You don't understand. It's not just about him. It's about everything he knows, everything he was created for. And you've unknowingly become part of something far larger than yourself." The millionaire stepped back, his thoughts racing. Created for something. What did that even mean? The more the man spoke, the more everything about Lucas's story started to click into place, but it still didn't make sense. The boy wasn't just abandoned. He had been part of an experiment. A test. And the people behind it were relentless in their pursuit. They wouldn't stop until they had control of Lucas again. "I'm not letting you take him," the millionaire repeated, more resolute now. His protective instincts were stronger than ever. He was the one who had found Lucas alone, vulnerable, and terrified. He had given the boy hope when no one else had. There was no way he could let these people take him back to whatever nightmare he had escaped from. The man's gaze softened slightly, but his words remained cold. "It's not your choice. You have no idea what you're up against." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They'll come for you too." The weight of those words hit the millionaire harder than anything before. Whoever they weren't going to stop until they had what they wanted. And now that the millionaire had become involved, there was no turning back. With a final look at the millionaire, the man turned and began to walk away. But as he reached the end of the driveway, something unexpected happened. There was a loud crash, followed by the screeching of tires. The millionaire's heart skipped a beat. He rushed outside just in time to see a black SUV speeding away from the house, disappearing into the night. It had happened. The chase had begun. They were after Lucas. And whoever they weren't just after him. They were after something much more valuable. The realization hit hard. This was bigger than just a boy who had been abandoned. This was a dangerous game, and both he and Lucas were caught in the middle of it. Inside, Lucas was in a state of panic. He was pacing back and forth in the living room, his face pale and his hands shaking. The millionaire rushed to him, trying to calm him down. "Lucas, it's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out. I promise." But Lucas shook his head desperately. "No, they'll find me. They'll find us. It's already too late." Before the millionaire could respond, there was a knock at the door. This time, there was no hesitation. The millionaire knew what was coming. He opened the door cautiously, half expecting the worst. But standing there was someone unexpected, someone Lucas recognized. A woman. She was tall, with dark, intense eyes, and a calm demeanor that immediately put the millionaire on edge. "I'm here for him," the woman said, her voice steady, though there was a hint of urgency behind it. "I can help, but I need you to trust me." Lucas froze. His face turned ashen as he took a step back. "No, I don't trust anyone anymore." The millionaire was torn. This woman seemed like she had answers, but who was she? Could he trust her? Was she with the same people who had been after Lucas all along? The woman took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I'm not with them. I'm here to stop them. I'm part of a group that's trying to help kids like him. People who've been through what he's been through. You don't have to trust me right now, but you have to believe me when I say they won't stop until they have him back. And they're already close." At that moment, Lucas turned to the millionaire, his eyes wide with fear. They're closer than we think. I thought I had escaped, but I was wrong. They never stopped looking for me." The millionaire's mind spun, and he knew he had a choice to make. If he trusted the woman, he could risk everything. He could risk putting his own life, and Lucas's, in more danger. But if he didn't trust her, they would remain alone, with the danger closing in faster than they could run. "I'll help you," the millionaire said, the words leaving his mouth before he fully realized what he was committing to. But he knew, deep down, this was the only choice he could make. He couldn't let Lucas face this alone. Not after everything they had been through together. The woman gave a small nod, her eyes flickering with relief. "We need to go. Now." The tension in the air was thick as they gathered what little they could and rushed out the door. The rain was still coming down in sheets, but it no longer mattered. What mattered was that they were running. For their lives, for the truth, for the chance to escape the nightmare Lucas had been living. As they drove away, the millionaire couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The danger was real, and it was closing in fast. But what was the truth behind the experiments? What had Lucas been a part of? And what would happen if they couldn't outrun those who were hunting them? The answers were still unclear, but one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of something far larger. And whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. As the night swallowed them whole, the millionaire looked at Lucas, who sat silently beside him, still haunted by the past. The story wasn't over. It was only just beginning.